Hi, PerspectaWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday, January 21st. Quite an interesting weather pattern unfolding for the next couple of weeks. It looks like there's a decent chance at some accumulating snow for the D.C. to Philadelphia to New York City corridor over the next week or so. We have a couple of winter storm threats coming to the Mid-Atlantic region next week. It looks like the first one may be a late Monday into Tuesday time frame. And the second threat could be Wednesday night, Thursday. We've, of course, had multiple threats over the past several weeks, and most of those, if not all of those, have fizzled out as we've approached event time. So it's still cautiously optimistic if you are a snow lover in the D.C., Philadelphia, New York City corridor. This is, in fact, the forecast map from last night's control run of the ensemble version of the European model for total snowfall over the next 15 days. This goes all the way out from today to February 5th, and any tinge of purple on this particular map represents 6 inches or more. So indeed, this particular run of the ensemble European model from last night has significant snow accumulation, not only in the D.C., Philadelphia, New York City corridor, but really all the way up through New England and down to the southern part of Virginia. Again, this encompasses the next 15 days. We have a continuation of high latitude blocking. We've talked about the negative North Atlantic oscillation, the negative Arctic oscillation. They continue at this particular time, and in fact, the high latitude blocking has been so strong it has acted to help to suppress some waves of low pressure that have come across the southern U.S., unable to make it all the way up into the mid-Atlantic region. That's something we'll watch again going into next week. Let's take a look at the NAO, a trend for the next week or two, because there's some interesting and important, potentially important changes coming to the North Atlantic oscillation. And here's the NAO going forward to the beginning of February from the ensemble run of the GFS. All black represents actual observations. Red represents the forecast trend over the next couple of weeks. Negative territory right now. It basically remains similarly negative over the next few days. And then it starts a trend probably later next week towards the neutral line you see up here. And that could be an important indication that the strong blocking pattern, the west NAO, the negative west NAO that we'll see in a moment here, could tend to weaken a little bit during the week next week, and that actually could allow for storm systems to push a little farther north than they have been over the past few weeks. In other words, perhaps allow for the possibility of a southern system to make it all the way northeast into the mid-Atlantic region. Let's take a look at the upper air height anomaly pattern expected for next week. And here it is. This is from last night's ensemble run of the European model, actually yesterday's run, a 12Z of the ensemble European model. And here we are. This is the positive height anomalies of 500 millibars for the average of the 5-day period from next Monday to the following Saturday, so basically a 5-day period or so of the all-important week. It looks like, again, maybe 2 threats to deal with, late Monday into Tuesday, and then a second threat maybe late Wednesday into Thursday, these threats for the Mid-Atlantic region. And this is the high-latitude blocking pattern expected to continue next week, but as we saw in that trend for the NAO, it'll tend to go a little bit more towards neutral later next week. In other words, this will weaken just a tad, and again, that could allow for some southern energy to make its way all the way into the Mid-Atlantic region for a change. That hasn't happened over the past few weeks. We've had kind of a snow drought in the D.C., Philadelphia, New York City corridor ever since that mid-December snowstorm. That snowstorm dropped 10 plus inches of snow in the New York City metro region, 6 plus inches in Philly and surrounding suburbs, maybe 2 or 3 inches on the western side of the District of Columbia. Places like Dulles Airport, Springfield, Virginia, Bethesda, Maryland, all got 2 or 3 inches middle part of December. But since then, not much has happened. The storms that have been threatening have either been suppressed to the south with this very strong high latitude blocking, or in some cases have just weakened substantially by the time they pulled out of the central U.S. into the eastern states, partly as a result, again, very strong high latitude blocking. So we'll see what happens here next week, but a slight weakening could actually be beneficial if you're looking for snow in the mid-Atlantic region, with perhaps that second system coming next week. We'll have to wait and see over the next several days, and there's still a long way to go. The upper level energy is what we'll look at next year, still way out over the Pacific Ocean, not only for the late week system next week, but also for the Monday, Tuesday potential event. Well, let's now take a look at the 500 millibar vorticity field from the 6Z version of the GFS from last night. And I want to point out a couple of things. First of all, watch this initial wave currently located over the Baja region, California, as we begin the day here on Thursday. It just kind of slides to the east and tends to weaken. And again, this has been kind of the pattern over the past few weeks. Again, partly as a result of that very strong blocking pattern over the northeastern part of Canada, the western part of Greenland, tends to suppress the systems and also helps to kind of weaken the system as well. Now here is the next wave of interest. This is the Friday night forecast map. So first thing I want to point out is this wave of energy is currently well out over the Pacific Ocean, so still a long way to go before it even gets over a landmass. And of course we have better data observations once it reaches land. So in other words, bottom line here is we have a lot of details to be ironed out about these threats coming next week. This actually represents the area of energy that could produce snow or ice or even rain in the mid-Atlantic region come later Monday into Tuesday. Now let's move forward here and notice this system starts to push to the north and east. This is by next Monday, and it does push a little farther to the north and east, again perhaps as a result of a slightly weakening high latitude blocking setup over northeastern Canada, but again a slightly farther to the north trajectory of that particular wave of energy as compared with the current one sitting over the southwest U.S. this morning, and it just gets squashed as it moves east over the next couple of days. But here is the energy associated with that potential system coming later Monday into Tuesday, and here's the next wave right on its heels, way out over the Pacific Ocean right now. Doesn't even slide to California, arrive in California until Monday of next week. So still a lot of details have to be ironed out, especially regarding that second wave of energy, but also the first one as well, still out over the Pacific Ocean. Let's move forward here. Here it is into the Midwest and having an impact on the Mid-Atlantic region. Again, the timetable for a potential snow or snow, ice, and rain event later Monday into Tuesday in the D.C. metro region, Philadelphia, perhaps as far north as New York City. Remains to be seen on the finer details of this. And then right on its heels, that next system, and could that take the same sort of track? It does start to turn to the north and east by the middle part of next week, and then kind of reaches its northward limit. A lot of cold air in place for this second system later next week. If it does make it into the mid-Atlantic region, a pretty favorable picture for snow with high pressure to the north, cold air in place. But we'll see how far north and east it can penetrate, again with strong high latitude blocking up over northeastern Canada and the western part of Greenland. Well, now let's take a look at the surface forecast maps from last night's 6Z operational run of the GFS. Cold winds this morning in the I-95 corridor region, but they'll kind of flip around to a southwesterly direction by the afternoon. And although we are starting off very chilly in some of the suburban locations this morning, Thursday morning, let's say down in the low and mid-20s, it'll jump to the 40s this afternoon with kind of an increasing southwesterly flow of air of air ahead of the next cold frontal system. Let's move forward here. Here's that southern system, suppressed it once again way down to the south, into the deep south here by tomorrow morning. And look at this strong, cold, high pressure system by tomorrow morning over the northern plains. A lot of northerly winds on Friday cutting across the Great Lakes. And a cold frontal system comes through the mid-Atlantic region during the day on Friday, and that'll usher in a very cold air mass for the weekend. Saturday and Sunday could feature high temperatures not much above the freezing mark in places like Philadelphia and New York City, potentially setting the stage for a winter storm event Monday into Tuesday. Let's move forward. The southern system stays to the south. Cold air floods the northeastern part of the nation over the upcoming weekend, and then we start to watch that wave of energy that is still out over the Pacific Ocean as it comes across the country over the weekend and into the early part of next week. This is now the Monday afternoon forecast map. Cold air in place here, but retreating a little bit as we begin the new work week on Monday. And here's that low pressure area. Starts to turn to the north and east, runs into that high latitude blocking situation, and really that kind of ends its movement to the north at that particular time. And then it'll start to track to the east and head out in a direction just to the south and east of the D.C. Philadelphia corridor region. Here it is by Monday evening. Some precipitation moving in, perhaps in the form of ice, snow north of the Mason-Dixon line late Monday night. And again, the northern extent of that progression of that low pressure area kind of ends in the Midwest, and then it slides. Basically, it's pushed to the east instead of continuing a northeast track. And that's potentially important because whatever mixed precipitation begins, for example, in the D.C. metro area or to its south and east, could actually change to all snow as this low pressure system slides on by just to the south and east. And here we go into the overnight hours, Monday night into Tuesday morning. Again, snow starts to push to the south and east as low pressure pushes to the south and east of the D.C., Philadelphia, New York City corridor. Whether or not it makes it all the way up into New York City still remains to be seen. A lot of details have to be ironed out. That is the first threat next week. And then we have that next wave of energy pushing into California by the middle of the week, and it slides across the country, and we have another system to deal with potentially in the Mid-Atlantic region later next Wednesday night, Thursday time frame. How far north and east it comes, still in question. Energy associated for this particular system still way out over the Pacific Ocean. Notice, however, strong cold high pressure to the north, a 1040 millibar high, very cold air in place ahead of this system. How much moisture pushes into that cold air Wednesday night, Thursday of next week, still way too early to say. This is kind of the northern extent, maybe the Mason-Dixon line for last night's 6Z run of the GFS, but a lot of snow, even way down into the Carolinas with that strong cold high pressure system to the north. And that's the northern extent from last night's run. We'll have to see how all this evolves over the next several days. So again, we're sitting here with two threats on the table for next week, winter storm threats. Later Wednesday into Tuesday, later Monday into Tuesday for the initial threat, and then later Wednesday into Thursday for the second threat. Exactly how far north and east these particular winter storms penetrate next week still has to be determined over the next several days. So certainly stay tuned to PerspectaWeather.com for updates not only later today but for the rest of the week. There certainly is a lot of potential for accumulating snow in the D.C., Philadelphia, and New York City corridor over the next week to two, going into the early part of February. That's it for now. For PerspectaWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.